Hi, I'm Hilary Russo. Thanks for joining me for the HIListically Speaking podcast. I'm a certified holistic health coach and havening techniques practitioner, lover of great conversation, and of course, clever wordplay, HIListically speaking. So welcome to an empowering place where my guests share their transformational stories of trauma to triumph through health, healing, and humor. It's the ultimate brain candy as we find out who we are, how we got that way, and what it takes to be a happy and healthy grown-up. And be kind to your mind. I'm glad you're here. Not every break or bruise is on the surface. Not every disease is detectable, and not every illness is obvious. Basically, in the words of filmmaker Kim Warner, some things we want to fix just can't be seen. If you were to meet Kim, you would be taken by her, no doubt. First of all, she's beautiful, and she speaks with such kindness that you just feel safe and supported. The energy around her just feels good. And this is coming from someone who's only met her virtually, but I have a feeling that will change at some point. Talk about the power of presence. What you may not know about Kim, or even see, is she lives her life in constant motion. You see, since 2015, she's been living with a neurological disorder that has thrown her life off balance in every sense of the word. Imagine living your life like you're on a boat, rocking, bobbing, swaying. I don't know about you, but I'd be running for the Dramamine. However, for Kim, getting off the boat is not a possibility, and finding balance is an everyday challenge. But isn't it the challenges that make us stronger? I think so. And as you'll soon find out, even for a life that is always in motion, Kim embraces the ups and the downs, personally and professionally. Because being unfixed is exactly what is giving Kim the kind of motion that's making a difference. The passion and purpose that keeps her true to her craft, even though it has shifted in the most beautiful way. Now, she holds space for a different kind of storytelling to be told, one that focuses on others like her who may be unfixed, but they are certainly far from broken. On this episode of HIListically Speaking, get to know Kim Warner as she shares her journey embracing the unfixed part of herself, how she's found the calm by surrendering her body and having grace, and what she's doing to find her sense of self through the stories she shares. It's a message in how to live well, even when you don't feel well. So it's time to trust, let go, and listen. There are times when I talk to my guests and I think like I have known them forever. And Kimberly Warner, Mama, you are one of those people. I had one conversation with you and I'm like, do we know each other? Because I just feel like we do. Yeah,
I think we do. I am so excited to spend time with you, my new friend Hilary, today. So it feels like we're just, I woke up this morning and it wasn't like, oh no, I'm doing a podcast. It was more like, I'm spending time with my friend Hilary today, even though we really don't know each other.
Well, gosh, I hope you don't really get like that with podcasts. I doubt you do.
No, I love them.
I'm so elated to actually have you on HIListically Speaking, not only as my new friend, but also as someone who is sharing a really important message. And, the one thing I love about doing what I do is that I have people that come to me and they say, you have to talk to this person. You have to get to know this person. I think you're totally going to align with this person. And people are usually nailing it with me, and you definitely are one of those people. So thank you for being here. I'm so elated to hold space for you and share more about Unfixed Media and who you are and your story and the message that you're putting out there into the world. So tell me, Unfixed Media, for those who might not be aware of it, what is the whole premise of this project and just your life behind Unfixed Media?
Yeah, it really started as a personal journey, a personal quest, really. I was diagnosed with a rare neurological disorder when came down with the symptoms 6 years ago. I wasn't diagnosed until 4 years into it. But I did the whole chasing the cures, trying to find a fix. wrapping up my value and my self-worth in being able to be fixed. And when I couldn't, I mean, I went to every single doctor in the universe and all different types, naturopaths and Western meds. And this was just really bottoming me out. I felt completely helpless for the first time in my life. And I had lost a parent to a car accident. I mean, I had a lot of other things in my life, but all of them I could kind of put into a box, or at least psychologically work my way through. And this was something that I felt so helpless to. And the neurological disorder was really unnerving in and of itself, because it was 24/7. There was no relief. It's called Mal de Debarquement syndrome. And it's this constant sensation of being in motion. If anybody has ever gotten off of a boat and not gotten their land legs back right away, it's that, but it's all the time. Laying down does not make it better. In fact, stillness makes it worse. So this sense of stillness disappeared inside of me. And, you go to any yoga class and they're like, just go within and breathe and find your center and find your stillness. And that was a place of torture for me. That had been a place of respite, but suddenly my body, my internal experience was torturous. Anyway, so all I wanted was out. I just wanted an escape and a fix. But that was not anywhere near the horizon for me. And after 2 years of chasing, I was exhausted. I didn't have a career anymore. I'd lost friendships. I'd lost my sense of self. Was barely leaving the house. Going to the grocery store even was hard because of all the visual disturbances that come with this constant sensation of motion. So I had a family member ask me, what would it be like if you lived with this forever? And I just thought, what? Like, no, I can't. That's an impossibility. There has to be a cure. But she planted a seed for me.
That's a powerful question to be asked.
Yeah. And I grew up in a very able-bodied family. Everybody, Boulder, Colorado is where a lot of them are. There's a green drink for everything, right? And I was not willing to go, I'm going to be broken. This was not part of my internal dialogue, but it did plant a seed. And it really took a while for that seed to be watered, but I finally got to the point where I realized I needed to find people who were doing this. And because I didn't have any mentors out there, my mentors were all the ones that were drinking the green drinks. And you can't really turn to social media or media in general and find stories about people at the bottom of the mountain. With all Hollywood loves the unfixed stories, but they're the ones where they overcome it and they climb to Everest, with one limb. And I'd like, where are these stories? I needed that. So that's why I started Unfixed Media. It really began as a documentary film, though, just talking to these people that I was finding who were living with a variety of different chronic illnesses that didn't have an end in sight.
The idea of Unfixed Media, was that kind of in your mind a way of healing? That was your therapy because you weren't finding it elsewhere?
Well, I've always had
knowing you're not alone.
Knowing I'm not alone, but finding tools. I really needed tools to learn how to live well. Even there's that quote of how to live well even when you don't feel well. And I could not find the tools for that. And I wasn't going to, kill myself, even though people with this condition they just want out, So I just thought, so here's a little side story. There's this television show. I've never watched it, but it's called Chasing the Cure, some reality TV show. And I right prior
Mm.
to beginning this documentary, I actually emailed them and was like, I want to be one of your subjects. I want doctors from all over the world to chase my, cure. And so I submitted, and I actually made it through like 3 rounds of production interviews. And I remember sitting just in the other room in the kitchen table during one of those interviews, and he talked to me for like 2 hours about the whole story. And when I hung up, I just bawled, like bawled in a way that I had never bawled before. And it wasn't because I thought, oh, woe is me, this is never going to happen. It was, I'm so tired of this conversation. I'm so tired of thinking that I am not valuable unless I'm fixed. So that I don't have anything to offer this world unless I'm fixed. So I, emailed the producer and I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So that was the beginning.
That's a powerful shift. The thing that resonates with me with what you just said is that being unfixed doesn't necessarily just mean you have a physical disability. It can be an emotional, it can be, there's so many levels of where we feel that we're not
Oh, yeah.
whole or where we are broken. And how I can't imagine there's one person on this planet who hasn't at some point in their life thought there's something about me that needs
Yeah.
fixing. And when we come from that place of wanting and lacking, that's a really dangerous place
That's a
to
really
be.
good way of putting it.
So that call, even though you made it so
Mhm.
far, yeah, that call, that shift that you had, where do you go from there? I mean, living with something and being empowered by it and creating something where you're able to touch, move, and inspire others. Gosh, that seems like a really beautiful way to be part of the healing, but it doesn't take away the fact that you're still faced with the rocking and the swaying and the feelings that you didn't have a majority of your life. It's not like you were born with this. That I would imagine is even more
Yeah, you
difficult.
just have this, your sense of self just disappears. And you're right, every one
Yeah.
of us, everyone is unfixed. I mean, we're all going to die. Like, just the nature of being human is unfixed. But
Mhm.
I always say that because I'm looking through it through the lens of chronic illness and chronic conditions, it puts like it's like unfixed on steroids, because many of us with a chronic condition, we're living with it 24/7. If we have an unfixed marriage, it might be a couple years of our life, and then we get a divorce and we adapt and we move on. Or if we have there's other versions of
Mhm.
unfixed and that we all experience. But it's like I'm using this population and
Mhm.
myself to understand that process of being unfixed so that we can all learn from it. There are tremendous virtues that come from this 24/7 experience of uncertainty. And I really can almost use uncertainty and unfixed interchangeably. Um, and I've said it many times, but I think the virtues that come from grappling with uncertainty all the time are perseverance, curiosity, empathy, creative problem solving, faith. I mean, the list goes on, but I have firsthand witnessed this in the subjects in the Unfixed docuseries. They have really shiny hearts. Like, really, and I'm not
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
we're not saints, but boy, you give them something really hard to deal with, and I have seen love shine through every single one of them, and in really difficult situations. So, like, wow, I mean, what a great place to restore my faith in humanity.
And be in a sense of community, have a sense of community, people around you that they might not be going through exactly what you're going through. Like in life, nobody is dealing with exactly what I'm dealing with or you're dealing with, but we can understand and have that empathy. Being around that kind of environment and that energy, I can only imagine it creates such a warmth for you and an excitement to want to do more and be more in this world. Which you're doing,
Absolutely.
by the way.
I love these. I love these people. I love them so much. I've told myself, in fact, I was literally just emailing one of the subjects this morning. She had a surgery. She has trigeminal neuralgia, which is also known as the suicide disease. And she had a surgery this last year and it fixed her. And my director of photography is down in LA right now and potentially going to film her on Saturday. And she emailed me and she said, I need you to know I'm wrestling with this a little bit. Like, can I talk about this topic? Because I'm fixed. Like, I really have no more symptoms. It's gone away. And I, it was a really interesting question to explore with her.
It kind of makes me think about when I'm talking with clients and sharing some of my thoughts just in my own journey, on my own journey. We talk about, the book that we're writing, that are the chapters of our lives, right? And a lot of times people struggle with their past. And I always say it's like that, well, that's a chapter in your book. I mean, you might not be able to change the story, but you can change the narrative, right? So people are out there on stage all the time in movies, writing books, telling their story. But even if she has fixed this, it doesn't mean it's not part of who she is. And isn't that what makes the
Exactly.
story even more powerful? You're not living like an
That's
imposter,
exactly
like,
what I
oh, I'm not
said.
really. It's just so empowering to hear that there's possibility,
Yeah, like
like
her story
giving
is
hope to
important.
those.
It's a
It's
part of
possibility. Yeah.
its possibility, its
Yeah. I
hope.
love that.
And I was like,
Yeah.
those virtues that you developed because of all the suffering you went through, those aren't going away,
Mhm.
right? Like suddenly you're not going to be like an empathic, curious, generous hearted person just because, all of
Mhm.
your suffering is gone right now. Like, no way. That's going to stay with you. And I said, I feel even I still try experimental drugs here and there just to see one day if
Mhm.
maybe I will go into remission. And every time I start one, I have this thought of like, well, what if this is this going to be the one? Am I going to wake up tomorrow and have this gone? Because that happens. And if it happens, I am still committed for the rest of my life to working with this topic and with this population. And
Mhm.
there are layered reasons why, but the number one is that like I said, my faith in humanity has been restored. There have been so many moments of light and generosity of spirit and kindness and insight that there's no phoniness, nothing is false when someone's in
Yeah.
the belly of suffering and they're still willing to love.
Or even witness to it by being on the side and being a supporter. I mean, it's one of the reasons how I found you. When it comes to disability, I mean, I'm a child of a disabled father. I lived with a dad that had a prosthesis. I lived with a father that I lost at 29 from severe diabetes, from the impact of diabetes. And witnessing that as a child and being around chronic illness and disease and also disability. My father, who was amazing and with it 100%, used to tell me all the time that disability doesn't mean inability. And putting that in my mind at such a young age was what allowed for the empathy and the compassion and understanding. And those tools don't have to be coming from someone who's living in it personally. It can be being in that environment and being around it, and I find that to be very powerful, and I still take it to this day. So whether there's a cure that comes to Kim, or whether there's somebody in your life that has dealt with something really personal and you're alongside on the journey with them, what we take away with it and how we put it out there in the world to be better as a human being for others, that doesn't change.
Well,
you know?
I have to credit with having a heart that was willing to be impressed upon by your dad's
Mm.
experience. I think that is a tribute to who you are, because I still think there are a lot of able-bodied humans out there that think these stories aren't for me. This is a different
Mm.
population. This is a different set of experiences. And I really, it's an unusual thing. I know Gustavo, one of your former guests, has also, we've talked about this. How do we get people to
Mm.
listen to these stories that don't necessarily relate to the experiences of physical suffering?
I would love to give him a shout out too.
Yeah. Oh, Gustavo, man, I love that guy.
Thank you for sharing that. I was just going to mention, if you have a chance to, if you're adding to your podcast list of things to listen to, give Enable Disabled a chance, because Gustavo has a really beautiful story himself, and he's holding space much like you. And coming from that side of dealing and living with a disability, we need more storytelling like that and places to share it, because if it can touch, move, and inspire one person, or as I always say, throw back that one starfish, you're going to make a difference to the ecosystem. Even though it's just that one starfish, you made a difference to the starfish, right? So, yeah.
Yeah,
So shout out to
absolutely.
Gustavo, definitely. But you're doing that too,
Yeah.
and it makes me think about everything that I've learned in my life just from my own experiences. And even working, for quite some time, I volunteered with therapeutic horseback riding with children that were on the spectrum or dealing with physical disabilities, and being able to witness the change just in 14 weeks of doing occupational therapy on a horse, and the love and the desire between the horse and the human, it changes you even more. Like animal therapy, pet therapy, there's so much more than just people, and we can really learn a lot from animals too. So the one thing I want to talk about a little more, you've been mentioning Unfixed Media, and you have this, and you mentioned a little bit about the stories within Unfixed Media, and the Life Rebalance Chronicles is really what I want to touch on right now. And that was something that recently you completed. It's a number of stories, but I want to hold space for you to share more about that. And I mean, I've seen some of, oh gosh, it's so touching, Kim. But I want it to come from you, and what this can be, and how you're sharing this.
Yeah. Well, this project came about in the middle of the docuseries that I had already started with the 20 subjects with all different types of chronic illnesses. And then an organization, a vestibular disorders association, came to me and said, we want something similar, but we want to only focus on patients with a variety of vestibular disorders. And of course, this was near and dear to my heart, because Mal de Debarquement is a vestibular disorder. And but they wanted to tell stories of 9 different patients collectively, and do a 6 episode series on all the different facets of life that are affected by vestibular disorders, not just the body and how that changes our physical experiences, but how that affects our mind, anxiety, our cognitive abilities, and then how that affects our spirit. That was one of my absolute favorite episodes. The way that it breaks us down and then builds us up again. Self is another, just the identity, who we were and who we've become. Anyway, so there are these 6 episodes and 9 cast members from all over the world with a variety of different types of vestibular disorders. But oh my gosh, I fell in love with every single one of these people. I mean, everything that they shared, I related to. And I spent years thinking I was alone in this. First, thinking that I was losing my mind, thinking maybe that I'm having some sort of psychotic break. And then, second, thinking, well, I can't find anybody out there that's dealing with this. And I look totally normal. So there's that other layer of having an invisible disorder where people look at you and go, come on, you look fine. How could you possibly not go to the grocery store today? Just, And to finally hear this population, this group of people who are gorgeous physically, every single one of them just presents themselves in this gorgeous way. And they were saying the same things that I have been feeling for 6 years. And wow, that was really rewarding. So, we've formed a lifelong family together, and even though the series is over, the bond is there, and that will last forever. So that final episode just released yesterday, and it was actually really fun. So, side note, all of this has been happening during the pandemic, of course. So I am not in their living rooms. This is me training them all to record themselves with their fancy smartphones and their little tripods, and teaching them how to frame themselves well, directing them over the phone, talking them through things that they feel uncomfortable with, and doing everything remote. So they ended up just same thing with the Unfixed docuseries. They just really dove in and took it on like a project. So anyway, the last champions, yeah. But talking heads can only go so far, and I'm still a filmmaker at heart, and I'm like, I just need some B-roll. I need some shots of you and your lives, and we had some really cool B-roll for the first 5 episodes that my co-producer Mia Allen created, and boy, she just knocked it out of the park. She was just like stepping into the lives of these people and doing these real artistic vignettes throughout. But then the last episode, I was like, let's challenge the cast to shoot your own B-roll. And they did it. They got out, they got their partners, their kids, whoever had any sort of knack for holding a camera, and they shared their lives with me. So this last episode is really special because we've got them exercising, cooking, hanging out with their babies. Just, beautiful, beautiful footage. So I'm so proud of them.
I love that. Look, I love that. We have the tools, and I don't just mean like inside of us, in our bodies and minds. I mean, we have the tools. And I'm a college professor, and I teach on-camera presentation and production at the college level. And I'm always telling my students, this thing that you're constantly on, and you're swiping and turning and liking and whatevering, this thing can shoot major Academy Award winning movies, and it has.
Yeah.
And when we give ourselves permission to try new things and get yourself outside the box and take risks, it's amazing what we can do. And then we're like high-fiving ourselves left and right. It empowers them that they took it to another level. It's not just a talking head telling your story. It's being part of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And showing the motion of life,
Yeah. And it all was an accident. The fact that pandemic hit around the time that the documentary started, but I have to say it was my first two. We actually did start production on the documentary. So the first two subjects, we were in their living rooms with a room full of camera gear, a 6-person film crew, which was small, but it was still large, less intimate. And I have to say, there's an intimacy that cannot be matched when somebody is alone in their bedroom with a tiny little tripod and their smartphone, and they're just talking. And I have received the most heartfelt, tearful moments from people that I don't know if you could get. If there's, people futzing with lights and a giant, RE camera, and especially because you're not dealing with professionals, you're dealing with people that have never done this before. So there was a little bit of a blessing in disguise with this pandemic, because I think it really encouraged some intimate sharing that maybe wouldn't have happened.
And learning to do new things, try new things. I mean, I think that's a big thing. Spending time with yourself, but also learning how to still stay connected during this pandemic. That's something I've been sharing a lot, is that the social distancing does not mean disconnecting. social distancing doesn't mean social disconnecting. I found that it meant more time with self and learning more about me, but also learning new ways to connect with people that I might not have done so often before. I mean, we're Zooming like crazy, right? And and you're challenging people to try new things that are already dealing with and confronted with disability, including yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what would you say before we go further, I just want to share with listeners, because I can go on forever and just forget to do this, but I want to mention that we are talking with Kimberly Warner. She is a delight. You are a delight. I'm talking like you're not here. You are a delight. And she is the founder of Unfixed Media, here to share her story about living with chronic illness. It's vestibular disorder. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a tricky
tongue
word.
Twister.
Yeah, it's a very tricky word.
But living with and holding space for those like her to share their stories with Unfixed Media, with Life Rebalance Chronicles, with another project we're going to talk about. And if you absolutely find this podcast of interest, if you are finding it that it touches your heart or it could potentially touch someone else's heart, which I imagine it will, consider sharing it with just one person, and you can make such a difference in the lives of one person. Pay it forward, my friends. Definitely do that. And thank you to my friends at Squadcast for allowing me to share these stories of others on the Squadcast space. So going forward, I do want to share more about who you are and what you're looking to do. You mentioned that the Life Rebalance Chronicles just has been completed, but that does not mean it's over, right? There is a space where you can go. The Disorder channel is where you can watch every episode of these 9 amazing stories, these warriors, as you call them. And you have more projects that you're working on. You have something coming up as well, yeah?
Yeah, it's probably never going to end. Things will just come out of the woodworks through partnerships, and but I do have one project that's ongoing called MS Confidential, and that was one of the original unfixed subjects. Her name is Elizabeth Jameson, incredible woman with very progressive MS, and she had an idea to create a roundtable similar to The View. But using 4 subjects, diverse subjects with different stages of MS. And so every month we have a gathering with the 4 of them discussing a topic. And she gets down and dirty. She's like, I don't want to talk about, love and light. I want to talk about jealousy. I want to talk about being a burden. I want to talk about sex. I want to talk about. So she's awesome, and leading this project in Unfixed Media is helping those conversations happen every month. We also just started a campaign to wrap up the Unfixed docuseries with a grand finale documentary called Why We Matter. And this question has been on my mind since the beginning. And it continues to rise up often when like I said, I grew up in a very able-bodied family, and I still have lots of people just go, it's great that you're doing this, Kimberly, but does it really, do I need to listen to these stories? I don't have these experiences. I'm not dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. I don't have a vestibular disorder. Why do these stories matter to me? And I have been really digging into some of the research, just even in the corporate world, is kind of interesting to see how diversity improves even the bottom line in corporations, and corporations that recognize this and have inclusion initiatives, they outperform all of their peers. So we can get into the statistics about why we matter, but for me, we're going to get on planes and see our subjects for the first time in 22 months. We've been talking to them. We've been creating videos every month based on certain topics, and we're actually going to be in their living rooms. And actually, our first one is happening today. My director of photography is down in LA, and she's filming a lovely woman named Brianna, who has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And we're going to be filming all of them and asking them why they matter. Why their stories matter to this world.
Oh,
So I'm so excited.
that's a powerful question.
It's a powerful question. And I don't know how they're all going to answer.
That's a powerful question.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we should all answer it, right? Why do all of our stories?
You know what, Kim? I don't know if they know how they're all going to.
I mean, tell me.
We should constantly be asking ourselves that
why
question.
Why do you matter? I want to know. Tell me why you matter.
Tell you why I matter? Oh, I love that. You're asking me a question? Okay. Why I matter? That's a loaded question. I mean, I think there's a lot of different reasons why Hilary matters. I think I'm here to share, to hold space for people. Right here, I matter because I'm a connector and a person who is a powerful connector and loves to have good conversations. And I think coming from a place of empathy and compassion in my life, I know that through community, we can be better. And that's one of the reasons why I matter. And I matter because I matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I matter because every day I'm doing everything I can do to become better for this world and for myself.
I love that.
What about you? Why do you matter?
Well, in the context of chronic illness, I think the reason why the stories of chronic illness and why my story of what I've dealt with the last 6 years matters to this world is because for me, I'm learning that I can be joyful in suffering. I'm learning that I can still have a purpose and that my life has meaning when I feel like shit. I'm learning that there's this paradox that I can hold of having a real expansive life that is of value even when I'm broken. And I feel like that story is important for people to understand because there are a lot of us that are broken. And like you said in the beginning of this, it's not just physically broken. And that vulnerability is our strength. And that vulnerability is a service to this world. So they complete us. Our wounds and our weaknesses complete us. And they equip us to help others. So I feel that my story matters because it's a teaching, it's a teaching.
Yeah, we learn through the lessons, or as I say on this podcast, our traumas are our triumphs. The mess is the message, right? Mm-hmm. And we all have one. We all have something to share. And if we're not sharing, we're holding space for others to share in the moment. I think part of it, and going back to that, it made me think of something else. I mean, when we're going through something in the moment, it is like the worst thing in the world for that moment. And I even look back onto a number of traumas I've been through or situations. It doesn't necessarily have to be trauma. And think in the time and the place when I was going through it, it was like, just, I can't anymore. I can't do it. I don't have the strength. Just like enough. And then when you find yourself on the other side, you realize it's so much part of the journey that makes who you are so that you can be everything that you're meant to be and why you matter so that you can serve others, so you can serve yourself to be better, and you have a mission, and no life goes without importance. None, so
yeah,
I just want to be better.
Absolutely. One of the things that was so, and that's if there was a theme in any of the subjects in the Life Rebalance Chronicles, it was that. They, in the self-rebalance video, especially when they talk about their dissolution of their selves, their identities, who they were, who they once were, and then as they talked about it, they recognized that they became advocates. It was just this natural like outgrowth from their suffering, that they started to care for others and that they wanted to serve others. And it's I don't think it has to happen that way, but I don't think I know anyone that I've spoken to in the last 22 months that hasn't had some sort of like the light bulbs go on in their hearts and they go, wow, I really want to help others now. And it's not because they feel better. It's just because they've joined their tribe and their tribe is expanded and they don't want other people to feel alone.
We're not alone.
So
we're in this together.
Kind of no, we're in this together.
We are so in this together. Yeah. Everybody.
Interesting. Yeah, we are. And if we can start to see that hardship can turn those lights on in our hearts, if we can reframe hardship and suffering so that when we're in those darkest moments, we can have a little glimmer of a moment of going, yeah, this sucks right now, but I think this is shaping me. This is somehow sculpting something in me that may make me more available to another human being at some point in time. Like I think we've done such a disservice to our world in not talking about just being unfixed, what those moments are like in our lives, and how that can actually be a really valuable, crucial part of our own development.
When you look at where you were 4 or 5 years ago to where you are now, what's one word that comes to mind?
Peaceful. I'm more peaceful. And, I think the peace, ironically, because I feel this constant sensation of movement and I crave stillness more than I've ever craved before, I've been forced to find inner stillness. An unconditional inner stillness that can't be shaken. It's really...
Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. I mean, it forced me to find an inner stillness. And so through all the storms in life, I feel more peaceful. I feel so much more resilient to just allowing them all to move through me instead of being the perfectionist that was like, things must be this way in order to feel this way. It's kind of like, it's all there and it's all part of the experience. And I'm so not in charge of this, but there's something inside that is unshakable.
Yeah. You might not be in charge of the physical in the moment and how this is part of your everyday, but there are definitely parts of you that hold the reins and the wheel, and it's our thoughts. And that could be a really powerful healing tool as well. I would imagine you agree with that. You can just see that.
Oh yeah. Our thoughts are huge. And our, for lack of a better word, because it's tossed around so much, but mindfulness. For me, the experience of, if anybody who's listening has done meditation, you've probably heard of the blue sky above the clouds and the storms, and the ability to shift channels and perceive that blue sky even when the storms are moving through, and knowing that both of those can coexist. So it's a resiliency and a flexibility of our awareness that I think is really, even if the mind is going, I hate this, blah, 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 and all the negative thinking is going on, because sometimes I can't control that, right? Like, I mean, I'm personally, I have a really active mind, and I'm like, shut up, and it won't. So I've had to just allow the duality to coexist, that the negative thinking, whatever, just run its course, and know that there's this more spacious, open, loving space that can hold it all.
There's something I've been meaning to ask you, and it's this. With the vestibular disorder and the constant feeling of motion and moving that impacts you in your everyday, is there any place that you physically do feel that you aren't in motion, like when you're in a car or on a boat, or the feelings that you have when you actually are on a solid ground? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I don't know if you've done any research on Mal de Debarquement, but the deciding factor as to whether you have that versus any of the other vestibular disorders is it goes away when you're in passive motion. So when I'm in a car, it's gone, like not just a little bit gone, but completely gone until I get to a stop sign. And then it just comes back like full force. So I've said this many times, but I have rolling stops at stop signs because as long as there's a little bit of passive motion, it's just entirely gone. So, everybody's different with vestibular disorders. For some, motion makes it way worse, like horrible. Mm-hmm. For people with Mal de Debarquement, often motion just makes it disappear. So I'm right now, I never sit at my desk because sitting, laying, sitting still is just the worst because everything is so much more strong. So I'm standing on a foam pad right now. It allows me to rock a little bit. And it helps dim down the sensation.
Does that cause you some sense of peace too when the rocking? I mean, because like in normal, we tend to move to create a sense of peace within ourselves. I mean, we're put in our mother's arms, we're rocked. I fall asleep in the car. I mean, these are all things like it's a psychosensory feeling that actually creates calm. So does it also create a calmness for you?
I think maybe subliminally, for sure. It definitely helps distract my brain from the experience. It's what my physical therapist and neurologist say. It just adds proprioception to the experience. So the more I can add to the experience, my brain can kind of dim out the other stuff. But you're right. Like, I think there is just this, if I can tune into it and just give myself that gentle rock and tell myself that it's a loving motion, that can be very nurturing. I'm 6 years into this. So early on, not so much, it's.
Yeah. It's a tool you have to learn. It's change. So with somebody who comes from a place of being very active and being around the green juice culture, growing up like you did, I imagine that, I mean, there's a curiosity I have, and that is, there's a sense of peace and calm and wanting to be still, as we need that in our everyday. But do you find yourself always being on the go, because being on the go and movement actually eliminates the disorder? And that sounds like it would be a struggle in a way.
It is. You've hit the nail on the head. I like to move. And I like to work. I like my brain to be active. All of these are distractions from the experience. And it has been, I can, burn myself out a little bit. My husband sometimes sits on me, like, sit down. You need to just chill. But it's more soothing to my nervous system to be in motion than it is to be in stillness. And I'm talking about this in very, it's gotten so much better. So stillness, when I wake up in the morning, as soon as I am conscious, I'm aware of the motion in the bed. And I've become a lot more okay with that experience. So it's a constant renegotiation with yourself, and because I think our nervous system is wanting to just go into the primal self of like, something's wrong, there's an earthquake, or there's something, I'm perceiving something off, and it goes into anxiety or a panic attack, or I have to engage my mind and tell myself that it's okay, that I'm not going to fall over, that the floor is underneath my feet, even though it's trampolining underneath me. And there's this constant dialogue. And I found this with the other vestibular patients in the Life Rebalance Chronicles. We talk to ourselves a lot. We have all these little techniques to get through the day, putting our elbows on something solid, if we're talking to somebody, or bracing our hand underneath the table, or just telling ourselves that it's okay. We're going to be okay. We're not going to fall over. It's always there in the background.
Yeah. Well, who knows? It's a constant process, right? What is there something, or is there a routine in Kim's life that helps your everyday? I mean, you can't obviously get in the car like you're a child and your parents are driving you around so you fall asleep. But what is a day like for Kim so that you are more at peace even with movement?
Yeah, that one, I do. My husband does. We do go on drives more often. We joke about it. Sunday elderly drives. We live in the country
I
now,
love
though.
Sunday drives.
Yeah, love them. Like,
Yeah.
they are just heavenly now more than ever. But we left the city and we live very rural. And I have very routine is really, really important to people with vestibular disorders.
Mm.
So trying to keep those surprises as much as possible at bay. And so I always wake up at the same time. I spend the first hour taking care of the hens, taking care of the fish, taking care of the yard. There's always some puttering to do. And it's not like super active, but it's just moving around outside, breathing the fresh air. Sometimes I'll bring my camera out and I'll take some pictures of the sun rising, or record the birds chirping, or somehow just engaging with nature. I've done yoga pretty much my whole life. I've done qigong. I don't do any of them formally, so I kind of mishmash them all together, and I'll just do some sort of organic movement. If it's raining, I'll probably not do it as much. I don't like to be out in the rain. But then I have to say, this work with Unfixed is very centering to me. And even if it's just replying to emails, it's the connecting to others is very centering. So while it's staring at a screen, which is not my friend, while it might be editing films, which I love, but I can get obsessive about, all of it is feeding this larger purpose. And when I feel like I have that sense of purpose, I feel fed. So I can't dismiss work not being part of my wellness program. But I also cut myself off at 4:30 every day. I sit down and I do the New York Times crossword puzzle, and I rock back and forth while I'm doing it, and get up. And sometimes I have to put my back on the floor because that feels nice and solid. So I move around a lot throughout the day, changing positions, and I really love cooking. So I always prepare a meal, and then we just chill at night. We love to just distract ourselves with good stories, Netflix, Apple TV, just absorb ourselves in other people's lives. I am a huge fan of that type of distraction. And I think I grew up with the sense that, like, somehow, oh, you can't do that. That's just bad. You have to be productive all day long. And I am a big fan of surrendering at the end of the day and enjoying all the incredible storytelling that is out there, because, and it's endless. I just am such a fan of films and movies and miniseries and everything out there right now. So that's my day.
I imagine as a filmmaker too that it's research in a way. So you are working in a way, because every story is potential research. I think that too. But we have this idea that we have to be go, 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 go in order to be successful and productive. And the whole FOMO and fear of missing out and all that stuff comes up. And it's especially, I think, being an entrepreneur myself and being a business owner myself, I think it's even more difficult for those of us who work for ourselves, because those, the 9 to 5ers, the ones who are working certain hours within a certain company, and then they go home and their work is left at the door. And in this day, I mean, they might be working at home, but you know what I mean? It can be heavy on us because we're like, we are our hardest bosses. So we also need to like give ourselves time off.
Yeah, grace.
It's a lesson I had to teach myself. Definitely.
Grace, and just having grace with ourselves.
Definitely, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
I love that. Grace. That's another powerful word.
Grace, yeah. Grace is a big one that comes up a lot with people with chronic illness, because we expect more from ourselves. Our minds are sort of in this battle with our bodies, and we have to surrender to our bodies and give ourselves grace and go, today's not going to be that day that I'm going to get that project done. It's just not. And that's okay. So, yeah.
So I love that you shared the word grace, because that kind of moves us into this next segment of HIListically Speaking, where I love to do a little game, a word association game with my guests. And that is, I throw out a word to you and you come back with the first word that comes to mind. And these are words that I have written down during our conversation. This isn't, I just love when people's looks on their face. Oh, listeners, if you could only see this. But anyway, I'm going to throw out a word, and it's just from the conversation. And what I want you to do, without much thought, just come back with the first word that comes to mind. Let's see what's going through Kim's head when I throw out these words. Ready, my dear?
Ready.
All right. So let's start with the obvious. Grace.
Kindness.
Uncertainty.
Unfixed.
Storytelling.
Love.
Cure.
Well, it's not one word, but the word, what came up was tricky, not possible.
Okay, good. Balance.
Sway.
Compassion.
Purpose.
Motion.
Friend.
Stillness.
Longing.
Unfixed.
Joy.
Oh, girlfriend, I felt that. You are a joy. Thank you for sharing you. Everything about you. Unfixed Media, Kimberly Warner, Life Rebalance Chronicles, Why We Matter, Because We Matter. And I just want to give you a moment to share with listeners any final thoughts that you would like to leave them with.
I have goosebumps. Those are my physical thoughts. My body is saying I have goosebumps. I feel just so grateful to you and helping these stories be heard. I feel that humans, we're a layered and complex bunch. But we have a lot of light and a lot of goodness in this world to offer each other. And I think we just need to listen. So thank you for listening and sharing.
If you want to learn more about Kim and the beautiful stories she's sharing, visit unfixedmedia.com. You can even make a powerful move of your own by supporting her latest project, Why We Matter. Check out the link on the podcast page to watch a short video about the documentary. And take it one step further and connect with Kim and Unfixed Media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You'll see those links as well. And when life feels off balance, please know you're supported. Connect with me and find out how I can guide you on your health and healing journey with havening techniques and put the power of active emotional well-being in your own hands. The link to book a complimentary call with me is just a click away at hilaryrusso.com/havening, or you can drop me a DM on social media at Hilary Russo, and let's see if we align. If you're interested in sampling a havening session next month, you can join me at the Wellness Gala on November 14th in New Jersey. I'll be holding space for you all day with the gift of healing, health, and humor at my booth. Just grab those tickets on the link I'm providing and claim your spot. I cannot wait to see you. And if this episode resonates with you, or you know someone that will be touched, moved, and inspired by it, consider passing it along. It's so easy to spread kindness. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. HIListically Speaking is produced by Alan Seals with music by Lipbone Redding and recorded on Squadcast. Thanks for listening. And remember, you're beautiful just the way you are. So be kind to your mind. And don't forget to laugh.